How about this fucking team right here? Look at this fucking team.
I love hockey. It's a great game.
All right, guys, welcome back to Vodcast Hockey, and as you can see, we're down to the wire. There's 9 games left in the season. The Kings are hanging on to a playoff spot for now, but we got to talk about how this team's playing because honestly, since the last video, I was pretty high on the Kings, and I'm starting to get a little bit more nervous. Just looking at kind of the results here, earlier on in the season when I was feeling really good about this team, you see 3 wins in a row, 5 wins in a row, 2 in a row, 4 in a row. This team was putting wins together. At this point in the season now, it's a lot of mixed results. 2 wins in a row here. I know Kings fans were really happy about this road trip to Western Canada. I kind of feel like the Kings got a little lucky here. Getting the shootout loss against Edmonton, it felt pretty lucky. The shootout winner against Calgary, pretty lucky. This Winnipeg game, the Kings looked really good for a while, and then the third period, it was really scary. And then we played Calgary and Edmonton again, and we lose those. And 3-2 is a 3-2 league. 3-2, 3-2, 3-2, 3-2. It's close games that the Kings are playing, but they just don't have the goal scoring right now to be able to back up the defense and the goalkeeping. So looking at the injuries, obviously Brown, Doughty, Athanasiou still out on injured reserve. The talk on Doughty is really mixed. People are saying that he could come back soon. Other people are saying he's done for the year. It's a big loss for us. It continues to be a big loss, and he's kind of the guy that we still really need back. The other scary person is Mikey Anderson, long-term IR. We'll see if he can come back, but the defense it's been struggling. I think one of the questions that the Kings have to ask themselves is how much of the recent performance is due to the injuries and the lack of proper personnel, especially on the blue line, and how much of it is just, that the team isn't ready yet. I do think getting Matt Roy back in the last game is huge. He's hopefully going to really solidify this defensive core that's obviously very young. I still continue to have problems with Jordan Spence staying in the lineup. He's just making too many mistakes and not really adding enough offense to kind of warrant keeping him in the lineup. Already with Sean Durzi, you have those kind of growing pains in the sense that defensively he's just not as sturdy or as solid as other options. But with Durzi, you're getting energy in the lineup. He's, a big character player, especially on the bench. You can see it in just the celebrations afterwards. The way he hugs the goaltenders, he brings a lot of excitement to the team. He fights guys. He really brings more energy and a lot more offense to be able to kind of deal with the shortcomings on the defensive side of the game. With Jordan Spence, I just don't see it. I think I'd much rather have a Jacob Moverar playing on that, that bottom pair, and kind of just keep things simple. This team is struggling to score goals, but I don't know if keeping a younger player like Sean Durzi and Jordan Spence is really going to help them score more goals. So in my opinion, I want the defense to go a little bit more big, a little bit, less offensive minded. I just think the team needs to stick with a little bit more experience on the blue line. Hopefully, again, we get a guy like Drew Doughty back. But Matt Roy coming back should be a really big addition. Didn't really help much in the last game, but after a month out, having to defend against Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl is not the easiest first game back. So you got to give him some leeway there. On the fourth line, Brittle Mew comes back, so Lizotte is still out. It doesn't look like an IR thing. It's hopefully just day-to-day. But if we can get Lizotte back now that Lemieux is back, and put Kaliev on that line, hopefully that brings that fourth line back, because when this team was winning games, that fourth line was a huge part of it. They really set the tone for the team. Tom McClellan talks a lot about handing off your shift, and they did that. And Blake Lizotte, just something about that trio, it really worked, and that fourth line struggled since those guys went down. So if they can come back, that gives us our fourth line. The third line, it's kind of hot and cold, but that's kind of what you expect with a line with three rookies in Kupari, Velarde, and Byfield. They've looked really good though in certain games, and I think the key to this team going down to the wire and hopefully into the playoffs is you need four lines that are producing. The first line with Kempe, Iafallo, and Kopitar. Iafallo snapped his goalless drought at 23 games, so maybe that can help him. Kempe's started to find the back of the net more. He surpassed 30 goals and is one of the first Kings to do it in quite a while. So that's really special. I think the season that Kempe's had is big. Obviously, it's a contract year, so not sure what that's going to mean for the salary cap next season. But if Kempe can continue to be a true first line player, or at least a true top six player with 20, 30 goal upside, that's a big part of the future of this team. And then the second line, you don't really have to talk about the second line. They've been the most consistent. Really since December 1st, they've been the best line on our team, one of the best lines in hockey, to be honest. So if they can keep going, if this first line can start getting goals again, if the fourth line becomes that same fourth line that we had, and this young third line can continue to build some confidence, build some chemistry, this team could go into the playoffs with actually four solid lines that they can depend on, which has really not been a factor that the Kings have had this season at all. The third line for most of the year struggled. The fourth line's been hurt for the last little bit. The first line was struggling with a slump for a 10 to 15 game stretch. So if this team in the next 9 games can just get these guys back healthy and firing on all cylinders, it's just going to be a huge boost to this team. Again, if you do make the playoffs, which is not as set in stone as it looked maybe a month ago, but the Kings still are in the hunt. And looking back at the schedule here, there is games that this team should win. It's going to be a little tough going into Minnesota. Minnesota is always a tough team. They really had our number last year when we played them in the different divisions. Colorado's going to be most likely a loss. That's just a tough team to play against. But the end of the year here, this is where you need to get this team ready for the playoffs. You have Columbus, Anaheim, Chicago, Anaheim, Seattle, Vancouver. If you win the majority of those games, you're most likely in the playoffs. And, what does that mean for this team? It's hard to say. Obviously, you don't want to look too far ahead at the future. The goal still is to make the playoffs, but if this team does make the playoffs, what does that mean for the future of the franchise? So this next part, I just want to talk about the future of the team and where this team can build, because right now it's pretty clear the team isn't a true contender. Playoffs are obviously the goal, and that's going to be really important for the future development of a lot of the young guys on this team. But what is the goal for the remainder of the year and the playoffs? In my opinion, it's pretty simple. We have guys who have done it all, guys who have won the Stanley Cup. They know how to win. They're proven winners, right? You have Anze Kopitar, obviously. Phil Deneau hasn't won the Cup, but you see what he did with Montreal last year, getting to the finals. He's just one of those guys that can win hockey games almost by himself. He brings so much defensively to a team. Especially if you're talking about a first round matchup against the Oilers, he's going to be playing every single minute against one of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, and he's going to do a pretty good job of it. So, you have those two guys. Drew Doughty, he's hurt right now, but if he comes back, that he's a big game player. He's going to step up. Dustin Brown, same thing. And then in goal, Jonathan Quick. I mean, I've seen a lot of talk about, who's the starting goalie if you get to the playoffs, Quick or Cal Peterson. I don't understand how it's even a question. I mean, you don't have to look at just 2012 Jonathan Quick to go with Jonathan Quick. Look at 2018 when we lost to Vegas Golden Knights. Jonathan Quick was phenomenal. I mean, the team in front of him couldn't score and we got swept, but Jonathan Quick was the second best goalie in the playoffs, just behind Marc-Andre Fleury. I just don't understand how, if this team does get into a game 1 in the playoffs, you go with Jonathan Quick, because you know that he steps up when he's needed, and it's Jonathan Quick. And Stanley Cup playoffs, you go with Jonathan Quick. He's been the face of this franchise for so long in net. You don't change that to hopefully give Cal Peterson some experience. But that changes when you talk about the outfield players. Guys who need experience. Adrian Kempe, he's one of the few young guys on this team that's played in the playoffs. He played in that 2018 sweep against Vegas. He 4 games and no points. So he needs to get some playoff experience. A guy like Trevor Moore, giving him some big game experience. He played in the World Championships last year, did pretty good. So, giving him some proper playoff time, because I think his game really suits the playoffs. He's strong on the forecheck, good defensively, and just scores those, close to the net, tight area goals that are the majority of goals in the playoffs. Alex Iafallo, he's kind of becoming a leader on the team. Obviously, he's struggling really hard right now, but getting him some playoff time. And then all the young guys, Sean Dursey, if he can get some playoff experience and just kind of feel what a real big game feels like, because, if you're watching the Kings right now, there's talk of, these are playoff games, right? This game against the Oilers in the last game, if it has a playoff feel. It's not the same as the real playoffs. So getting a guy like Sean Dursey, Arthur Kaliev, even a Blake Lizotte, getting these guys, Quentin Byfield. If Quentin Byfield can have playoff experience going against Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, really stacked Edmonton Oilers team, down the line, that's just going to help him, help his development and help him understand what it really takes to not only get to the playoffs, but perform and exceed in the playoffs. Other stuff that the Kings need to do for the rest of this season is, one, they got to start winning at home. They've been really good on the road. A lot of these win streaks that I was showing you, road trip, 3 wins, road trip, 3 wins, 4 wins, sorry. Road trip, pretty good road trip here. They've done really well on the road, especially against the East Coast teams. So they need to figure it out at home. I guess that is kind of the blessing in disguise of getting the third seed in the playoffs is, having the away advantage, I guess, for the Kings. But they got to figure out how to play at home. Another thing is just keeping up with the identity. The Kings have done a really good job of building an identity. I talked about it a lot earlier in the year, especially with that fourth line with Lemieux and Kaliev and Lizotte. They just play that style of hockey that the Kings excel at right now. And it's, fortunately for the Kings, it's playoff style hockey. It's low scoring, it's good defense, just grinding away at your opponent for 60 minutes and, hoping to be able to get your goals and keep the other team off the board. And, even the little stuff that the Kings do, right? They're, one of the best teams in the faceoff circle. They don't take a lot of penalties. So even though the special teams aren't great, you're not taking a lot of penalties. You're not making yourself shorthanded too much. And they don't really draw many penalties either. So that's also kind of a good thing, because most of the time this year, the power play has just been a total momentum sink for the Kings. So, a tighter called game with less penalties suits this team, because I'll put up on the screen right now, the Kings are one of the best 5-on-5 teams in the league by far. And if you look at their expected goals, they're unlucky, you could say. I would kind of argue that the players just are not as skilled. So, when you see that they're, I think, 42 goals under expected, it just kind of, in my opinion, it just means that the guys we have shooting the puck in good areas just aren't scorers. They're not goal scorers. But even then, this team plays really well 5-on-5. They do the little things right. The stick checking throughout the lineup, from the defenders to guys like Philip Deneau, Trevor Moore, it's very good playoff style hockey. And so the rest of the season into the playoffs, you just want to keep building on that identity. Keep having these guys buy into McClellan's system because it really has worked this year. It's helped guys like Arthur Kaliev make that step into the NHL. He's turned himself into a one-dimensional player, into really an all-around NHL player who, is playing a pretty decent fourth-line style of game, even though that's not anywhere close to what people expected of him when he was drafted. And obviously in the future, you want him to elevate. But for right now, he's bought into the system and it's helped. A guy like Trevor Moore's bought into the system. Blake Lizotte, they bought into the system and it's elevated their games. And so if we can just keep doing that throughout the lineup, it should mean that this team next season comes in as true contenders. And I think another big part of the system that McClellan is putting in is that it's allowing every guy who needs to, be put in the lineup, whether it's because of injuries or whatnot, they come in and they know what they're expected to do, and they come in and do a pretty good job. Obviously, Sean Durzee's kind of the biggest example of that, coming in because of an injury and really taking a hold of that spot and becoming one of our top D-man just in terms of ice time because, that's what we need him to do, and he's been able to do that. But you look at a guy like even Jacob Moverare, who, is not expected to be an NHL player, but he comes in and he does a fine job, and that's just because the system is simple. It allows guys to excel, a lot like those 2012, 2014 Kings teams, where you had guys like Dwight King and Jordan Nolan just be able to come in and play that style of hockey. That's what this team is trying to build right now. They're trying to build an identity and a style of hockey that works within the entire system, from the AHL to the NHL, and hopefully, produces good results and gets this team farther along. That being said, I do think that the majority of the improvements that this team will make is going to be in the offseason. I do think that this team needs they need to make some moves. They need to figure out the defensive situation. There's a lot of prospects, a lot of guys, especially on that right side, who we have, and moving a couple of those, packaging a couple of prospects for kind of a solid top 6 goal scoring winger. I think is a move that the team should be making, and just would kind of help things out. If you have a guy like Iafallo who's struggled the last 25 games, the Kings kind of have to keep him on that top line because they've tried other guys on the top line. They've tried Arthur Kaliev. It just hasn't really worked. And so having another guy who you can put into that top line if, an Iafallo or a Kempe is struggling just adds so much to this team. And, you just have to find the prospects that are working. I don't think many people thought that Sean Durzi was going to be the next defensive prospect to come up into the NHL and make an impact. But, sometimes that's just what happens. And so with the big prospect pool that we have, it's all about finding the guys who are going to actually benefit you in the future and, giving them opportunities to work on their game, to develop even more. And the guys who you don't see in that spot, again, packaging them up for, more of a goal scoring winger, or, if you want to make a Jacob Chikrin trade, that's going to be kind of in the off season. And, I do want to talk about, if it does get to the off season, Dustin Brown, he's in the last year of his contract. We just heard that Ryan Getzlaf is going to retire at the end of the year. And, congratulations to him. It was a really good career, but it kind of gets you thinking about Dustin Brown. They were drafted in the same year. Brown's contract is up. He's been hurt for a while now, and not much talk about, if he's going to come back for the playoffs or not. And it just makes you think, does Dustin Brown come back? I could see him maybe hanging him up, especially if he doesn't get to come back healthy for the playoffs. We might see the end of Dustin Brown. It does, obviously, from an objective standpoint, it does help the team getting almost $6 million off the cap. But, as a fan of the team, you can't not love Dustin Brown and what he's done for the team. And so Yeah, just something to get you kind of thinking. With Getzlaf announcing his retirement, it could be soon for Dustin Brown because I really don't see him going anywhere else. I think if he wanted to come back, the team would give him kind of a league minimum deal. But again, the injury just kind of put some question marks on how many more games we'll see of Dustin Brown. But all that being said, all the talk of the playoffs and the future of this team, it really does come down to these final 9 games. If we look right now at the playoff picture, it's only a 4-point gap with Vegas, who has a game in hand. They're playing the Coyotes tonight. It doesn't look as secure as it did. So the Kings need to win. They need to find ways to win. They've kept a lot of games close. But it's time to kind of step on the gas pedal a little bit. And you look at the wild card. Vegas isn't even in the wild card, so really that third place in the Pacific is probably the only hope for Pacific teams, and the gap is quickly starting to dwindle. So we'll see what happens with the team. This is probably going to be the last video for the regular season until the end of the season, and hopefully we start getting into playoff hockey. But yeah, I mean it's getting down to the wire. It's scary times, and hopefully you guys stick around and we can continue this going on for a little bit longer. I mean, my birthday's in early May, and I haven't seen Kings hockey for a while on my birthday. So just hoping that this team can continue to find its way. We need more win streaks. We need to beat these teams that we should be beating here at the bottom of the standings. Who knows if it happens? Stick around and we'll find out. Thanks for watching. And again, if you can like, subscribe, do all that, that would really help.